So before we begin, we just have a few thank yous for making today possible. Cody's Towing for transporting all the tanks and equipment down here. The Collings Foundation, who graciously lets us keep the tanks for a few extra days at no cost. So that's their team on the tanks. The Mass Oath Keepers, they provided radio communication and support at all the corners and planning for this parade this year. The Beverly Elks for helping us supply a trolley for our older veterans to get down here. And behind us, Iron Tree has provided us with this large flag and the crane for this year. At this time, the District 8 Beverly Legion Chaplain, Bob Laws, will come up and give this starting prayer.
Thank you, David. You all uncover, please. You all please uncover. O Lord, God of hosts, as we gather to honor and pay respects to our comrades who have departed this life, it is fitting that we remember first our great nation. Grant that we shall appreciate and treasure the freedom that is our gift and our heritage, and that we may never forget the great price at which it was purchased for us all. We ask that you will watch over the veterans of this land, inspiring them to serve you and this country in now and ever creative ways. Comfort our ill, our wounded, comrades who have languished in hospitals or homes, brighten their burdens, retrieve their sufferings and pain, restore them to the blessings of health again. Amen. Cover, please.
At this time, the Beverly High School Band will perform the national anthem, so please remain standing.
Preset. Preset. Up.
At this time, Senator Lovely will come up and give her speech.
All right.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah. Great, okay. We gather here today as a community, as a commonwealth, and as a nation. We gather as people united in our respect and gratitude for the men and women who have served and have made the ultimate sacrifice on behalf of this great nation. On Memorial Day, we commemorate the lives of the men and women who served in the armed forces. And And we especially remember those heroes who answered the call of duty in an extraordinary way to protect our nation, our democracy, our freedom, and our way of life. It takes an individual with selfless determination and utmost bravery to place their life on the line, to safeguard our collective values of principles of freedom, justice, equality, and liberty. And they leave behind a legacy which is lived and embodied each day we walk outside our doors and have the freedom to choose for ourselves. It is our duty as a nation to ensure that today and every day their memory lives on, and their families know that their sacrifice was not in vain. Let us take this moment to thank and honor the men and women who served and whose lives were lost. And let us stand in solidarity as we mourn the loss of these valiant Americans and remain eternally grateful for the service and sacrifices of our fallen heroes. As President Harry Truman once said, our debt to the heroic men and valiant women in the service of our country can never be repaid, and they have earned our undying gratitude. America will never forget their sacrifices. May God bless all of our fallen heroes and their families and all of the men and women who continue to serve, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to offer an official citation from the Massachusetts House of Representatives and the Senate for our Grand Marshal. Official citation. Be it known that the Massachusetts Senate and the House of Representatives hereby extends its congratulations to Mr. Stanley Marion Misowitz in recognition of, let the train go by? In recognition of being named Grand Marshal of the City of Beverly's Memorial Day Parade. And be it further known that the Massachusetts Senate and House extends its best wishes for continued success, that this citation be duly signed by the President of the Senate and attested to, and a copy thereof transmitted by our clerk. It is signed by our President, Harriet Chandler, our clerk, William Welsh, and offered by me, your state senator, and your state representative, Jerry Paracello, with honor. Thank you, and congratulations.
At this time, we're going to present our oldest veteran with a replica plaque that hangs in City Hall.
Good afternoon. I'm Jerry Paracello, state rep here in Beverly. How many Marines do we have here?
Good.
Look. We have our Marine Corps JROTC right over there that does a great job for our community in Beverly. So you Marines know what it's like to go through boot camp. I was trying to think of what to talk about today, Memorial Day, and I came across this story that I don't think a lot of people know about. I thought it really was interesting and sort of emulated the sacrifice that our young Americans make for our country. Dan Bullock was a 14-year-old freshman in high school when he altered his birth certificate because he wanted to join the Marine Corps and serve his country and take care of his family. So instead of being a freshman playing basketball and football, Dan Bullock shipped off to Parris Island, South Carolina for basic training. A year later, Dan Bullock found himself 8,500 miles away at the tender age of 15, serving in Vietnam. Nobody in his command knew how old he was. He was a pretty big kid. One of his bunkmates had no idea. He said, oh geez, Dan was about 5'8", 170 pounds. Looked like an older kid, so no one even questioned it. But Dan served his country, and I want to read a little bit about Dan's story. The rifleman with the 2nd Platoon of Company F was at the An Hoi Combat Base in Quang Nam Province when a 1 a.m. firefight began on June 7, 1969. The heroic teen, realizing his fellow Marines guarding the base perimeter were outgunned, began running back and forth to deliver much-needed ammunition for the better part of an hour. Bullock's commander, unaware of the Marine's tender age, provided the details in a June 11 letter to his parents. Dan constantly exposed himself to enemy fire in order to keep the company supplied with the ammunition needed to hold off the attack, wrote Company Commander Kingray. As the attack pressed on, Dan again went to get more ammunition when he was mortally wounded by a burst of enemy small arms fire and died. Dan Bullock was 15 years old, 5 months and 17 days when he passed away. His buddy said that Dan took the secret of his age to his grave with him. He didn't have to. He could have gone home any time if he had just told how old he was. Dan is just one example of American heroes who paid the ultimate sacrifice. As a matter of fact, in Vietnam, there were 3,100 Americans who died under the age of 18 or under. Young men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. So that's what Memorial Day is should mean. It shouldn't be 10% off at Lowe's or the first day to open up the pool, but to remember those men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. So thank you all so much for coming out. This is a great crowd, and for taking a moment to honor those who made the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you.
Up next, we have one of our students, Abby Broninger. She's going to be reading the Governor's Proclamation.
A proclamation. Whereas, while the nation was still recovering from the horrors of the Civil War, people in cities and towns across the country gathered to honor those Union and Confederate soldiers who had given their lives celebrating the first Decoration Day. And whereas, after World War I, the nation came together again to honor those who had fallen in the service of their country. Renamed Memorial Day, the last Monday in May is when people remember and honor all men and women who fought and died in all American wars and conflicts. And whereas, throughout our country's history, thousands of Massachusetts citizens have fought in wars and conflicts to defend our safety and way of life. And whereas, their legacy of patriotism and dedication to country is an inspiration to all Americans. And whereas, it is appropriate that all Massachusetts citizens remember the bravery of those who gave their lives so that their sacrifices serve as a reminder of the cost of our freedom. Now, therefore I, Charles D. Baker, Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim May 28, 2018 to be Memorial Day, and urge all the citizens of the Commonwealth to take cognizance of this event and participate fittingly in its observance. Given at the Executive Chamber in Boston, this first day of May, in the year 2018, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 241st, by His Excellency, Charles D. Baker, Governor of the Commonwealth, Karen E. Polito, Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth, William Francis Galvin, Secretary of the Commonwealth. God save the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
The word Charlie is too important.
Thank you, Abby. Sorry about the microphone. Up next, we'll have Mayor Cahill.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to take 1 minute before my remarks to just bring our attention back to Stanley Misovich, because Stanley is 99. He will be 100 on July 22nd. Is that right? Yes, Stanley. And I'm not sure if you heard it, but Stanley fought the Germans in the mountains of Italy, oftentimes on skis, and then he participated in driving them back out of Italy. Did you not? Yes. So he's a hero in our country. He sure is. Thank you for your service, Stanley. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues in local government who are here today. We have two of our school committee members, John Milady from Ward 4, Kelly Ferretti from Ward 2. And also making the time to be with us are several of our city councilors. City Council President Paul Guanci, City Councilor at Large Tim Flaherty, Ward 1 City Councilor David Lang, Ward 2 City Councilor Estelle Rand, Ward 3 City Councilor Jim Latter, Ward 4 City Councilor Scott Hausman, and Ward 5 City Councilor Don Martin. Thank you all. A big thank you to everyone who is taking the time to be present today, to join us in honoring and remembering all the men and women who have answered our country's call and protected democracy in our times of need, especially all those who have made the ultimate sacrifice and given their lives in defense of freedom. Thank you to Beverly's veterans for helping us to remember this every day of the year, and for putting together today's parade and remembrances. Thank you to so many who have participated in the parade: our high school band, the Italian American band, the JROTC, the Cub Scouts, the Girl Scouts, the Brownies, the Boy Scouts, the Elks, everybody who's participated to help out in truly honoring those who have died in service of our country. And I also want to thank our veterans who are here. Every one of you have a story. Every one of you have given great service to our country. I also want to make sure to thank our local scouting troops who spent time over the last few days in decorating the grave sites of all of our deceased military members. And that is a very appropriate way, with an American flag at their grave site, to remember them. Thank you also to Beverly's Veteran Service Agent, David Parenchief, and the members of the Beverly Veterans Council for all the work you put in throughout the year and all the work you put in to make sure today is done well. I want to really share just one thought with you this afternoon. In the proud history of our country, the men and women who have served in our military have been our country's constant, our rock. They have always faithfully been ready. They have always responded when called, with courage, determination, and love for this great country. Our military have always lived up to the promise of America. They have fought and they have died, so we can all be free to pursue liberty and justice for all. During this same history, many courageous, good, wise, and patriotic men and women have served our country in elected and appointed positions of leadership. They have kept faith with our military. They have conducted their foreign policy in a wise and thoughtful manner. But that has not always been the case. There have been times in American history when political and civilian leadership have made the wrong decisions, have put our brave soldiers in harm's way for the wrong reasons, have not kept faith, have not exhibited the respect for the lives of our brave military men and women that they have deserved. The sacrifices of our military have preserved many, many freedoms that we enjoy in this great American democracy. One of our greatest freedoms is one I come back to every time I consider what we as Americans owe our brave soldiers. I've spoken about this before, and it truly can never be said enough. We all need to be active citizens. We need to listen, to study, to question, to participate in elections, to vote to choose wise leaders, because wise leaders will always have the safety of our military foremost in their deliberations and in their actions. And when wise leaders deploy our military, we can have more faith that all other options have been exhausted first. Of course, nothing and no one is perfect. The world, as beautiful and wondrous as it is, can also be confusing and dangerous. In many places in the world today, democracy is under attack. Wherever leaders try to take power for themselves that belongs to their people, democracy is threatened. And in many of these countries, democratic traditions and institutions are not as strong and established as they are here in the United States of America. So, it is as important as ever that we as Americans fight every day to defend democracy, both here at home and abroad. That America continue to serve as the beacon of freedom and liberty we have always aspired to. Again, we owe this to the men and women who have died to defend our freedoms and the freedom of people all over this world. And we owe this to today's military and to our children and grandchildren, many of whom will become the defenders of our liberty tomorrow. We can debate which political party has the right ideas and policies, who our leaders should be, and how our leaders should interact with leaders of other countries, how they should conduct our country's foreign policy. We can debate all these things, and we should, and we do. To truly honor our fallen heroes, who we gather here today to remember, I believe we need to ask two things of ourselves. One, that we do study issues. We do study our elected officials. And come election time, we study all candidates at all levels, local, state, and federal. That we read, we watch, we listen, we question what our candidates say and what is written and said about them. All the claims, all the proposals, all the sources. We research them for ourselves. We don't always take other people's opinion as fact. We research for ourselves, we determine what to believe, and then, and here's the second part, we ultimately participate and cast our votes, thus putting our faith in who we hope will be ethical leaders with sound judgment and courage. Then, after we elect them, we have to continue to hold them to the highest of standards and to make them live up to the faith we place in them. Because that is a very big way that we can truly honor our military heroes. That is how we can truly protect and support today's and tomorrow's military men and women as they stand ready to step into harm's way to give their lives to protect everything that we have and we hold dear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Up next, Bob Laws will be coming up to proceed with the readings, the reading of the names of the deceased, and we'll move on from there to taps and closing prayers. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I'm going to read an American Legion Memorial Day message from National American Legion. They still speak to us. If you listen quietly, you can hear them. You remember their voices from conversations you have had. They gave their last measure of devotion to this nation. And even if you are not a Gold Star family member, a battle buddy, friend of a relative, or a fallen hero, all you have to do is look around you to see their legacy. It is us, Americans, gathered in a free society, unified with the common purpose of honoring uncommon bravely. We are their legacy. Regardless of the place of war they fought, the purity of the sacrifices without question, young men and women lost their lives in order to make the freedom of others possible. More than 1 million U.S. heroes have had their lives cut short while fighting in war since the American Revolution. Time only prevents to tell us just a few of their remarkable stories today, but they are representative of many. A century ago, America was engaged in the war to end all wars, World War I. It was there that a brash aviator from Arizona earned a reputation for recklessness. Through his exasperated and many of his supervised officers, the 20-year-old pilot claimed a remarkable 18 aerial victories over German pilots in just 18 days. Frank Luke's mission usually involved busting observation balloons, which the Germans used to sight our artillery. On October 29, 1918, Second Lieutenant Luke shot down 3 balloons as he was being relentlessly pursued by 8 enemy aircrafts. Under heavy fire, his own plane went down near the town of Mervaux, France. Surrounded by the enemy on the ground, he drew his automatic pistol and he defended himself gallantly until he fell dead from a wound in the chest. Frank Luke was the first pilot to receive the Medal of Honor. Fast forward 50 years to another continent when yet another determined group of young American heroes, Sharon Lane, was committed to caring for these heroes and entered the Army Nurse Corps in 1968. A year later, the 24-year-old nurse from North Indiana, Ohio, was working hard at the 312th Evacuation Hospital in Chu Ly, South Vietnam. Women were exempt from the draft at that time. First Lieutenant Lane was a volunteer, and she was there where she wanted to be, and that happened to be with wounded soldiers. This was not surprising to her mother, who once told a reporter that as a child, she was always caring for someone or something. She always had a cat or a dog or some animal that she was taking care of. As our nation observed Vietnam War Veterans Day on March 29th, there were no Wapika pages for Lieutenant Lane. She did not have the Medals of Honor, Audrey Murphy, or the fame of Sergeant Alvin York, yet she was just another American hero. Rocket and mortar attacks were common at her base in Chu Ly. In her letter home, she wrote of one attack. "We all got of the patients under the beds, Ma, that were we could. We put the mattresses over them, the ones in tractions. Very interesting place, but hardly anyone here is scared. It's just doing our job." On June 8, 1969, First Lieutenant Sharon Lane made the ultimate sacrifice after a 122mm rocket blasted through her ward, killing her and 12-year other Vietnamese girl. Sharon Lane was the first female nurse to be killed by the enemy during the fire of the Vietnam War. The heroes that we remember today are not exclusive to any generation, race, or religion. They are a diverse group, wedded to the common principle that America is a nation worth dying for. Not all these heroes died because of enemy gunfire. Military service sometimes requires dangerous risks, even when its members are far from a combat zone. Certainly the 4 Marines who entered the CH-53E Super Stallion a couple months ago during a training exercise in South California did not expect to be their final mission, yet it was. On April 3rd, 2018, 4 young men, all in their 20s and 30s, died for the country as a result of a helicopter crash. The youngest, 24-year-old Lance Corporal Taylor Conrad of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, became a first-time father in October. The longest-serving Marine of the group, Gunnery Sergeant Richard Hawley, had completed 2 tours of Iraq. Captain Samuel Schultz previously deployed with the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit. His fellow pilot, First Lieutenant Samuel Phillips, was from Pinehurst, North Carolina, and joined the Marine Corps in August 2013. The hardest part of being a Marine is the tragic loss of the life of a fellow brother in arms, said their commanding officer, Colonel Craig LaFour. These war-horse Marines brought joy and laughter so many around them. They served honorably, wore the uniform proudly, and were a perfect example of what makes our Marine Corps great. Its people, they will ever be in their hearts and their minds. And they will forever be in the hearts and minds of ours as well, not just as Marines, but as soldiers, sailors, airmen, Coast Guardsmen, Marines who have made the ultimate sacrifice for this nation. We also extend our gratitude and support to a group that nobody wants to join, but has already given so much to their country, the Gold Star families. As we observe Memorial Day every year, these families remember their fallen loved ones every day, children without parents, Gold Star mothers and fathers, spouses and siblings, that they can still hear the voices of that they have lost. And it is up to us to hear the voices of these families offer our support and our expressions of high gratitude. Whether the people remember serving World War I, II, Korea, Vietnam, the war on terrorism, or any place in between, we say thank you for the freedom that you have given us all. We are because of you. God bless you, God bless America, and God bless our fallen heroes. Thank you. At this point, can everyone hear okay? At this point, I would like to read the names of the deceased members of Beverly from the various posts around Beverly. From the Goldberg Jasmine Jewish War Vets, Harold E. Cohen. From the Beverly Farms Vietnam Veterans Vets, Hardy Prince, who I believe also made 99 years old. Fortunato VFW Post 545, Hardy Prince, Ed Kean, Ed McMahon. From the Beverly Farms Post 46, Julian Lynch, John Sparaduglia, I'm sorry I pronounced that wrong, Sparadigliosi. John Trisdale, Stephen P. O'Brien Sr., John Green, Gerder Davis, Mike Drislane, and George Gazinski, and Gerald DeFazio. From the ANVIPs, Victoria Rocky Post number 56, Donald M. Gould, Michael A. DeSantis, Laura Dotato, Francisco Salveria, David A. Perello, Mary A. Rhodes, Francis G. Lewis Jr., John Sparadiglios Jr., William Mahoney, Augustus G. Gomes, Dominic Carnavale, and Edward J. Keene. And from the Herman A. Spear American Legion Post 331, Leo Anderson, Robert Perry, Warren Perry, and Louis Durlow. May they rest in peace. At this time, I'm going to do the closing prayer. At the end of the closing prayer, we're going to have taps. So, cover your ears. The loudness. O God of mercy, peace, and love, we remember before you this moment our comrades and our friends who have passed. We recall with gratitude and respect all that they stood for in life. Help us to live in the comradeship that they wanted and their spirit. They may be to our friends and family gone, but they are always with us, their loved ones. They are devoted to their community in which they lived and loyal to the causes that they served. Thus, in our life, may we still live on to our great comfort, to the betterment of your creation, and to further you in your holy will, O Lord. And please always remember and never forget our MIAs and prisoners of war who are still missing in some of all the great conflicts. Amen.